All right, guys, welcome back to the Hoop Portal. We are live for the UNC fan chat forum. Carolina has just lost to Michigan State. We can go into all the different stats and everything else that we saw tonight out of this team, but reality is it was just a gut check, and Michigan State was the tougher team tonight. If we do want to get into the stats, though, Michigan State shot over 50% on all splits tonight. 52% from the field, 50% from three on 5 of 10, 7 of 9 from the free throw line. The rebounding battle went in favor of Michigan State 37 to 30. Assists went to Michigan State 14 to 9. Turnovers went in favor of UNC 8 to 10. And offensive rebounds were a stalemate 12 to 12. So Michigan State really had it from multiple different levels tonight. Fears was amazing as a point guard. 19 points tonight on 8 of 10 shooting, 2 of 3 from the line, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 turnovers. Kohler and Cooper combined for 24 points tonight and 17 rebounds, 6 turnovers from both of them. Cohen Carr 8 points, amazing dunks. I think 3 of his 4 made shots, so 6 of his 8 points came from above the rim. And Caleb Wilson looked a bit human tonight in the second half. I think that Michigan State got really physical with him, and the refs allowed that to happen tonight. And Michigan State, again, was the benefactor of that. And we've talked about it on a couple different games now. Like, when you set the tone physically, like you almost, as a team, when you go out there, the idea is to make the refs determine how physical or unphysical it's going to be tonight. Michigan State does a great job. They get into foul trouble pretty quickly. We've seen that in the first half. We saw that at the beginning of the second. I think the foul count was 6-1. Michigan State 6, UNC 1. And when that happens, the refs tend to hold their whistle a bit more in that middle period and towards the end, which is what Michigan State found themselves in, being way more physical and the refs not calling certain things. And that's not on the referees to make the call or not make the call. That's on the two opponents on the court to take advantage of what the referee and what the situation is. If you guys are just joining us, please get in the live chat, talk to us about the game, what you saw. We're going to be open this up for all the fans and viewers, anybody who wants to get in. Just talk about where we're at right now with North Carolina. I think to get into what we saw now as far as the program, I think the problems that are there are not a specific person. It's not a specific coach. It's more so where the program feels to be at the moment as a whole, right? So this is not where we want to say Hubert Davis did this or he isn't the right coach or these players need to go or anything like that. We don't want to turn that into this, because in reality, I think there are guys that you can't question. Caleb Wilson being one of those, Henry Vasar being another one of those guys that I think from what we've seen out of multiple games tonight now, they're ready to go. They've been really good. They've been hustlers. They've been diving on the floor. They've been proactive. I thought Jonathan Powell played really good tonight off the bench. So credit to him as well. But this Carolina team seems to just be missing that umph. And in the first half, I just thought some of the antics by a couple of the players and coaching staff at UNC was just not who they've been. And so to me, it felt a little bit more, it felt out of pocket and you were getting out of character. And you never really saw Michigan State waver, which I've watched them play a couple times. That's who they are. They're what I would deem as real tough guys. And I feel like tonight Carolina tried to put on a facade of fake tough guys, and you get found out in that situation. CC says we didn't match their guard play. Absolutely. We just talked about Fears was amazing tonight. And that's something that we've seen multiple times out of Carolina now, is that the talent on the court is ridiculous. That is clear cut. So credit to them for identifying that talent and bringing that in. They were fantastic. I thought the talent that's on the court is clear. Vasar, Evans, Luka, Caleb Wilson. I mean, they're talented basketball players on the court. They just seem to be lacking that toughness. And I think the biggest thing that shows this whole thing in a nutshell was when we go, Henry Vasar comes out in the second half. You get a flurry from him of 11 points. And I want to say it was 9 straight coming out of second half from him. But you're unable to get a single defensive stop during that time frame. So when you look up at the score and you say, we just got a flurry from Vasar for dunks, layups, hook shots, hitting threes, making good passes, playing fantastically, and we look up at the scoreboard and you're still down 6. So then when you then say, we just got a flurry, our offensive game has been fantastic through these first 10 minutes of the second half, and we're looking at the scoreboard and we're like, dang, we still need to go on a 7-0 run just to get the lead back tonight. Because Michigan State was going to go on a run. They are a potent, high-flying offense that is going to go on a run. And when you don't contain them and get a run of your own and you play them equally, they're going to throw that final haymaker, and that's what happened tonight. And Carolina couldn't respond from it, and that was it. CC says Seth's defensive intensity would have helped match the energy Caleb brought early. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Caleb Wilson tonight was... What is going on with my audio? Let me just check this. So we're good. I think I totally agree with you. Seth Trimble tonight would have made a difference for this team, but I still think in a 16-point loss, they wouldn't have won the game, right? So in essence, when you look at it, yes, Seth would help. Seth is a player that helps you. He doesn't hinder you. But tonight, I don't think it was specifically about one specific thing. I mean, transition defense was horrible in the first half. Michigan State took advantage of it. When UNC was in that physical set, the length was so effective against Michigan State in those first few minutes. And Michigan State said, well, we're not going to keep doing this. Let's just get out in transition. Let's play fast. And Carolina's not marking. They're not communicating on defense. They're not picking up the ball. And it's open shot after open shot after open shot. And Michigan State made the adjustment. Then they spread the floor back out. But when North Carolina is able to compact it in and keep everybody inside, they're a fantastic defensive team, especially when you can go Wilson, Vasar, and Stevenson as that 3-4-5. You're in a really good spot. So your transition defense was not great in the first half. You got killed on that. Second half, your half-court defense wasn't great because Michigan State was just getting what they wanted at will. They were killing you on the boards in that flurry. Now, evened out, Michigan State did win the offensive or the rebounding total 37-30. This Carolina team right now is just, it's hard. It is hard to watch. And I think if you've grown up as a UNC fan, that type of performance was rare through what I would say most of my childhood. Now, teams might have just been bad and not been very good, and you had rough years. I think years with Quentin Thomas or post-national championship runs was not always great, but it never looked like that at times, right? And I think we've seen this a couple times now with Carolina. Navy was able to punch them in the mouth. St. Bonaventures was able to punch them in the mouth earlier this year in that first half of that game. Kansas was able to punch them in the mouth. The talent gap through, I think, most of those games eventually willed out. But tonight in a game where the talent gap is closer and one team's that much more tough, that's the result you get. And CC says they usually talk a lot on D, not tonight. Yeah, I mean, and you can see that, CC, in the transition defense, right? Like transition defense is solely effort to get back to your spot and then communication to find who you need to pick up. The effort was there. With that one play that Michigan State hit the 3 early on, everybody was back. They got back to where they needed, but then they didn't know who they were guarding. And that's where a team like Michigan State will punish you in that situation where you have to be almost perfect to withstand their body blows and what they're going to end up doing. Guys, remember, get in the chat. What do you guys want to talk about? What did you guys see tonight? If I keep going on some of my other things we saw, here's some points we brought up. Let's just stick with concerns. Bench depth. The team is starting to me feel a lot like, bear with me here, they're feeling a lot like the 22-23 team. In essence, not saying that they're going to miss the tournament. I don't think this team is going to miss the NCAA tournament. This team is a lot better than last year's team. But there's a clear gap from going to the bench versus the starting 5, maybe 6. And again, you add Seth, that gives you 7. But when you look at Michigan State tonight, who played 10 guys, there wasn't a huge drop-off for them. And in fact, the big run that they went on in the first half where Carolina settled for a lot of threes, that was Michigan State's bench that was starting to punish them in transition and in the paint. And that, again, is just the difference between two teams where it's like, okay, if this starting 5 could play 40 minutes, and we felt like that in a couple different years, 22, 23, and maybe even 21, 22 there at the end. It was like, okay, this is fine, but these guys are getting tired, and the best way for them to play is fast and out in transition, which adds another layer of conditioning to it. And I'm not saying they're not in condition, they're not in shape. What I am saying, though, is it is exhausting, and they are not going to be able to play 37 to 38 minutes, even in a game like tonight where you would want them to. And so there's just, it's tough. Because, and then too, we hear the commentators talk a lot about, Carolina's got these 4 to 5 guys that are all 6'10 and plus, but the truth is half of them you can't play. I mean, I really like James Brown. I'm not sure what's going on, but as soon as he came in, Michigan State attacked him in the pick and roll, and they didn't even run a ton of pick and roll. They were running a lot of actions off their bigs, but specifically when James Brown was in or Zayden High was in, it was just pick and roll to death, and that's why Zayden High only ended up with 4 minutes tonight, and James Brown was 7. And Wilson played 33, Vasar 28, Luka 35, Evans 33, Stevenson 28. And so you had to go to them a lot. And I think once you got to the end of it, Michigan State, who's also had guys in the 30, but they have guys coming off the bench playing 16, 12, 13 minutes. It's tough. It's really, really tough. The only player on North Carolina off the bench to reach double digits tonight in minutes was Jonathan Powell. And again, his numbers weren't great, 3 points, 1 of 5, but I thought he did do a really good job tonight on the offensive rebounding. What else do we have? Caleb Wilson tonight. I think to begin the game, looks like an absolute freak, which we've seen that every single time he's played. Second half was a lot different up until maybe the last 5 minutes. That 15-minute stretch to begin the second half, Hubert comes out. They run a specific play for him to get the backside post up on the opposite block. He settles for a fadeaway jump shot, and I'm not even sure the next time he really shot because that was when Vasar's flurry kind of started. Michigan State was extremely physical. There was one play, he's trying to backdoor or back cut off a screen to get the repost, just like the first play on the second half. And Michigan State, I think it was Cohen Carr, rode him all the way out of bounds. So the point where his entire body 2 feet out of bounds underneath the baseline. And the refs allowed it. And so if the refs allow that type of physicality, then you have to learn, okay, if they're being this physical, I have to learn to make a couple different reads, or the coaching staff needs to say, okay, we need to get some better actions to get him good shots and not just force it. I think they did that with Luka tonight too, where they got super physical with him. They forced him into some tough shots, and he made some really good shots tonight. He had, what was Luka's numbers tonight? 11 points, but again, 4 of 12 shooting, 2 of 3 from the free throw line, 1 of 6 from the 3. And that's just that physicality making you uncomfortable, making you feel the defense, making you feel that pressure. And I think the refs would have allowed Carolina to do that back to Michigan State, but we don't know because the mentality was never there to do it. And so that's where you could point at refs and say, this is a foul. You're letting them get away with a lot. And it feels lopsided, but at the same time, we can't make that statement until we see Carolina guys do the same thing back, and then they get called for the same fouls that Michigan State's not getting called for. I think the refs would have let them play. We don't know that because the physicality was not met specifically in that second half. Interesting point that we're going to get into now. Please get in the chat and talk to us about this and tell me. We did a video earlier today, and we've talked about this on some live chat forums and on the channel. This is going to sound weird, but bear with me and look it up. I promise you, I'm not telling you anything that's not true. Right now in college basketball, G League players are allowed to play college hoops. If you've been out of high school within the last 5 years and you haven't signed a 2-way contract, you are allowed to regain college eligibility and play. If the guys come in by December 15th, which for most schools is when the end of the first semester sticks, those guys are actually eligible to play this season. Now, the player at Louisville, London Johnson, is eligible to play in December. He's going to wait till next year. BYU just got to commit Ahmed, who's also eligible to play this year. He's just now transferred. He's going to wait till 26-27. The reason why those guys are able to come in is because there's injuries, there's roster spots, there's redshirting, 1,000 things like that of where these spots open up on these college rosters. I said it on a video earlier. Check out the short on the channel. if I'm a college coach and I look at my team and I see that there are clear depth issues, and in this case for North Carolina, I would say the bigs and maybe even the guards a bit. There's a couple different spots we could use some players in. You have to legitimately look at the opportunity and say, if we go get a G League guy in the next 3 weeks, and I know this sounds crazy, but I'm telling you guys the truth, you can do this. If we go look at some G League guys and get them into the university to apply for this transfer stuff, and maybe Carolina as a university wouldn't allow it to do it, but we've seen it done at BYU, we've seen it done at Louisville, we've seen it done at Santa Clara. Go look them up, get them in. You can add these guys to your roster and almost make these mid-season pickups and make your team better. And if I'm a college basketball coach, I'm looking at every possible way to get an advantage that's still within the rules, because it is, and say, what can I do right now to make this team better? And if I'm Hubert, I'm taking a good, honest look at just this roster and say, we don't have the horses to do what we need to do if the standard is Final Four national championships. Which brings me to the next point with this program. I think the fan base is split. I think CC says the game is gone now. I'm with it. I mean, yeah, but in essence, that is CC. Also, please subscribe, enter your name in the portal if you haven't yet. We'll be covering multiple different teams, not just Carolina. I'm a UNC grad, so they tend to get some love or maybe some hatred from time to time on the channel. But I think this is where right now as a program it's split. I don't know what the standard is at UNC. And that's where I think the goalpost is kind of moving, because there's not a set thing. If the standard is Final Fours and national championships, which is what the standard was for me growing up as a kid as a UNC fan, and if that's the standard, then what the program is doing right now is not matching that standard. If we're changing the standard and it's now just becoming, can we make the tournament? Can we be better than last year? Do we have guys that we like to pull for? And if the wins come, they come. But if not, it's great. If that's it, then I think they're fine where they're at. But this is where I think the university as a whole, and this is why this is not an attack on Hubert or saying he needs to be fired or saying this kid needs to go or why is this person playing for North Carolina? They're not good enough. We could all make those cases for everybody just about on the team. I just look at what other programs in the country are doing and the way that this is set up right now with NIL and transfer portal. There are ways to look at your roster and say, we can make adjustments right now and get better. And that's Pat Kelsey said at Louisville. He said we can either complain about the rules that are in place or we can use them to our advantage. I'd rather use them to our advantage and stop whining about it. Crazy thing is, Tom Izzo is one that's been complaining about the rules, and he has probably one of the toughest teams in college basketball. So there is an element of doing it that way as well. And a lot of those Michigan State guys, not all of them, but a lot of those Michigan State guys have been there for multiple years and are program developed guys. But that's another piece of the recruiting aspect of, are you recruiting players that are talented? And sometimes you overcorrect. And that's what I feel like this Carolina team has done. If you go back 2 years ago, that team may not have seemed as super talented with guys that came in the portal from like Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram, Paxton Wojcik. When those guys came in, there wasn't this element of like, oh, this is like extremely talented group like we saw this summer from people talking about this team. But they were tough. They were tough. They had grit. They had energy. And so they kind of upped that a level. And that is still, even with the national championship run Hubert went on year one, that group to me has still been the best program identity team that Hubert has had. This team feels like an overcorrection from last year's talent gap. And that is what you do when you hit recruiting trails. The talent gap is extreme from this year's group to last year's group. But is that toughness still lacking? And when it comes to playing teams like Michigan State, or we watch teams like Gonzaga, or teams like Michigan, or teams like Houston right now, where it's like those teams, you can see the fight on them. And we're just not seeing that out of North Carolina right now. But again, guys, please subscribe, enter your name in the portal, get in the comments quick. We're about to wrap this up here. Again, just a brief run through tonight, but I thought, let's do some positive. Let's end on a positive. Positives. No turnovers the first 10 minutes of the game for Carolina. That is really good considering the beginning of games had been a problem. Kansas, 4 turnovers in the first 4 minutes. Tonight, to go 10 minutes of the first half without a turnover. And then even throughout the game, they only had 8 turnovers tonight. So really solid by them. Positive. Um, Early on in the game, getting shots at the rim and making them, it was really, really efficient. But then that turns into settling for threes. I mean, 4 for 23 from the 3-point line tonight. I know you want to shoot threes and teams want to do it. There has to be an element, though, of when you just say, we need to get to the rim. And what killed North Carolina on the first Michigan State run, where it was looking good for UNC, was they settled for about 4 threes in a row, some step back, some fadeaways, and those bad threes lead to long rebounds, which lead to Michigan State out in transition and threes and layups on the other end. And that was just what killed them. But early in the game, though, they did get to the rim and they were making their shots and played pretty well. So we'll give them that. Defensively in the game, I thought the first 5 to 6 minutes, a couple lapses here and there. Defensively, though, if they're able to set their defense up and play in the half court, it did look really strong at times in the first half. Michigan State made their adjustment, stretched them out, and then got out in transition, and so that again hurt North Carolina. And again, I think a player that does need a shout out tonight was Jonathan Powell. I think he played pretty well. The offensive game was not great. He was gritty. He was nasty. He was getting on the court first for those loose balls, and he was keeping plays alive with offensive rebounds. And he was someone that I think I don't really question the energy and effort out of him. He becomes more of, can he develop the offensive game to go with it? And then kudos to Michigan State. I think I think they are showing that they're one of the toughest teams in the country. This is not going to be, from a statistical number standpoint, this is not going to be a bad loss for North Carolina. And the fact that when we get to March, I think some people will forget what happened tonight, or they'll just look at the numbers and see, okay, North Carolina lost to Michigan State on a neutral, and Michigan State is a legit 2 or 3 seed come March Madness if they stick with the trajectory they're on. Michigan State held Arkansas to 63 points. They held Kentucky to less than 70 points. Carolina was held to less than 60 points tonight. That's Michigan State. So you tried to play Michigan State at their game. They're real tough guys. And I'm not saying that like disrespectfully. They are a legit tough built program. And it's a good test for Carolina. You needed to go through this. You wish the response was a little bit different. Your next test is on the road at Kentucky and Lexington. Not going to be easy. Kentucky has not looked great this year, though. So it is a game that I think as a Carolina fan, you should feel, okay, while we might not win, it cannot look like what you saw tonight. I'm not saying it's a must win. I don't think it is a must win for them. But in the sense of that, you can't lose in the manner of which you lost to Michigan State tonight with. That's more so what this game is going to be like for North Carolina. And so you get back to the drawing board, you figure it out. I'm not going to pile on and say, some channels and some people might be like, Hubert needs to go, or this team sucks, or the toughness factor's gone again. There's cause for concerns, absolutely, with this group, especially given what last year's situation looked like. This team is not in any danger of missing the tournament. They're going to be in March. They'll be a top 6 seed, which again, from a North Carolina standard, is not fantastic. They should do fine in the ACC. You just need to see losses that are happening like this, not in the manner of where it's a really gut check and just a toughness. They just weren't tough enough to beat Michigan State tonight. And yeah, so we'll end on that. 94 feet of UNC. We should link up and collab on a show or two and discuss the Hills, my guy. Absolutely, dude. I'll subscribe, find the channel. I think I've seen you guys before though, watching some other Carolina stuff. So I'll reach out for sure and we can do that. Guys, please subscribe, enter your name in the portal. We're going to have another video going on. We'll probably do some stuff for Duke, Arkansas tonight. Sorry, my dogs at home are freaking out about something. Thank you for joining. Yep. See you guys on the next one.